Time now for our Life and Info segment where we focus on information useful for your everyday life. And today we're going to talk about food, more specifically the amount of sodium, salt in our daily meals. For more on that, I'm happy to say we have our Kim Mok-yeon with us. So Mok-yeon, it's a well-established fact by now that eating too much salt is terribly bad for you. But let's start our conversation by hearing about which countries around the world actually consume the most salt as part of their daily diet.
Well, good morning, Mark. I also was curious about that, and I did some research, and I found that according to a research held by the Queen Mary University of London, China had the highest consumption of salt, more than any other countries in the world,
right.
with an estimated average daily adult consumption of 10.9 grams per person, which is more than double the World Health Organization's recommended limit of 5 grams. Other countries with similar intakes include Portugal, Montenegro, and Benin.
So does this research explain why exactly Chinese people consume so much sodium?
Well, Chinese foods, especially those from the Sichuan province, are mostly known for their spiciness and strong flavor, which comes from heavily seasoned spices and seasonings. And such dishes are getting more and more popularity over the world, including South Korea.
Yeah, there are Chinese restaurants everywhere in major cities across South Korea, and many people order from them regularly.
Yes.
Sichuan is down in the south of China, right? That's where the spicy food comes from. But just walk us through then exactly what are the scientific reasons why salt is so bad for our health over the long term?
Well, consuming large amounts of salt can increase the risks of cardiovascular diseases, and this is really important for China because more than 40% of deaths in China are actually caused by strokes and heart-related diseases.
Okay, that's interesting. So what is the Chinese government doing to try and reduce their population's intake of all this salty food?
Well, the Chinese government has actually been working to reduce their intake by having a lot of campaigns and increasing public awareness on the dangers of salt consumption. Chinese food companies also have manufactured low-sodium products. But despite these efforts, it seems like the love for sodium is still hard to resist.
Yeah.
Southern parts of China, which traditionally consume less salt than northern regions, also saw salt consumption rise in recent years, exacerbated by the rise in processed foods and eating outside.
A lot of people in China commute from the northern areas to the south and vice versa. Because of this, people can easily taste northern Chinese cuisine.
Okay, so we talked about China. How about the sodium intake here in South Korea? People in this country, are we staying within our recommended daily limits of salt and sodium?
Well, unfortunately, there's no doubt that the salt and sodium consumption in South Korea has been decreasing in the past decade. But most recent data, which was in 2017, showed that the average intake per person dropped to 3,478 milligrams per day, which is similar to the U.S. and some European countries. But still, this is far above the WHO's recommended level of 2,000 milligrams.
Yeah, I don't know how many countries could actually go below the WHO's recommended amount, but it's rather surprising that South Korea is up there with the United States in terms of sodium consumption.
A lot of efforts have been made.
Yeah, but still, people have this stereotypical view that a lot of American food is processed and very salty. But why exactly are Koreans consuming so much salt then?
Well, many experts attribute this to the Koreans' habit of eating, and usually a traditional Korean table has stew and kimchi, which both contains a lot of salt inside, and this is a major factor of the high intake. Mark, speaking of this, do you like Korean food?
Yeah, of course. It goes without saying, I've lived here for so long. But one of my favorite dishes is bibimbap. But this is the bowl that contains the rice, the mixed vegetables, the red pepper paste and whatnot. But that certainly has a salty tang to it, I'm sure. So perhaps in terms of limiting my consumption of that, I should be a little bit careful.
Definitely. Actually,
because a lot of people still consider that to be healthy, right?
Yeah, because of the vegetables inside.
Yeah.
But bibimbap actually is the top one food that has the highest sodium.
Is that right?
Yes, sodium content among Korean foods. And this was done by a research by Gyeongbuk National University. Bibimbap contains around 1,050 milligrams of sodium, more than half of the WHO's recommended daily allowance. And this is partly due to the high levels of sodium in the hot chili paste used to make the dish. And other foods to look out are stews such as fermented bean paste stew or 된장찌개 and soft tofu stew.
Okay, before we let you go, apart from avoiding eating 2 bowls of bibimbap a day, can you give us any tips about how we can reduce our sodium salt consumption?
Sure, Mark. In order to prevent our bodies from sodium-related diseases, we should cut down on meat and instead eat more fruits and vegetables, which contain lots of potassium, which helps remove sodium from our bodies.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's easier said than done to avoid food with a lot of salt these days, but we'll try our best to eat more healthily. And thanks for the tips, Mok-yeon. We appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.